On this week's show, the Georgia Southern softball team wraps up their home schedule in style, sweeping Appalachian State. We'll have highlights. We'll also talk a little bit about how the Georgia Southern baseball team is doing. All that and more as we welcome you inside the Eagles Nest. And welcome inside the Eagles Nest. I'm your host, Josh Aubrey, being joined by Mike Anthony, sports editor and Georgia Southern beat writer for the Statesboro Herald. And Mike, things starting to wrap up for the college. You've got graduation coming up soon. You've got exams going on this week. The Georgia Southern baseball team coming off winning 2 of 3 on the road down in San Marcos against Texas State. They have Troy coming up this weekend. Your thoughts on how the Eagles are doing right now?
Well, I think we've talked over the last couple of weeks about how this team is starting to transform, becoming a different team than the injury-plagued, very young team we saw for the first 2 months. They get 2 big wins on the road, and this weekend is where it really comes down to it. I think this is where the Eagles prove whether they're a force to be reckoned with in the tournament or whether they're just going to play out the last 3 or 4 weeks of the season. You've got Georgia Southern currently in 4th place in their division, but it's a logjam. It looks like Coastal Carolina once again going to take the division, but South Alabama only a couple of games ahead of them. Troy only percentage points ahead of them. If they can win this series, they'll have the inside track as the final 2 weeks of the regular season. They played 2 of the lower-ranked, worst-performing teams in the Sun Belt, and nothing's a given in baseball. You've got to go out and win them. Sweeping series is very hard to do, even against teams like Arkansas State, Georgia State down the road. But the main key is to exit this weekend at J.I. Clements Stadium with a lead over Troy, who overall record-wise, one of the best teams in the conference.
Yeah, and I guess for the Eagles, you mentioned that they're getting healthier. They got a couple of players back, including Tyler Martin, who seems to be the 2 guys that got back, have both been playing well, and their pitching staff has continued to give them some innings.
They have, and they've continued to do so. They've had to drag along the lineup for most of the season, and I know no one wants to hear it because you've got turnover every year, but this really was a young team even before the injuries started to pile up. And as we've seen, there was a lot of struggle early, a lot of big strikeout games for the Georgia Southern lineup. The strikeouts are way down. This isn't a team that's going to score 15 runs. It's not a team that's going to hit 5 home runs in a game, but some of those freshmen and sophomores getting their first playing time this season, they have started to see those averages tick up just a little bit, and that's all the Eagles need from them. It's going to be tough no matter how they go at it, but if they can just assure themselves of a couple of rallies a game where you have a chance to maybe score 2 instead of 1. That's how this Georgia Southern team is going to need to win games. They've shown that they have the arms to do it. They've got 1 or 2 bats in the lineup that can hurt you. It's just a matter of keeping the rallies going until you get to that middle part of the order.
All right, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday against Troy here at J.I. Clements. As for the softball team, they wrapped up the Sun Belt. You always want to go in, or they wrap up the Sun Belt coming up this weekend at Georgia State, but they wrapped up Sun Belt play at home against Appalachian State. You always want to end on a high note. They had struggled a little bit. They did take 1 of 3 from a nationally ranked team in Lafayette, but then the Appalachian State Mountaineers come in, and that's just what the doctor ordered. They sweep them as they wrap things up this weekend at Georgia State.
And this is a team that we had sung their praises for the first month of the season, putting up a great record compared to seasons past. However, the injury bug hit them as well, and on the softball side of things, you aren't guaranteed to make the conference tournament. About 3 or 4 bad weeks in a row for the Eagles softball team, and they were on the verge of being on that bubble. They really had to get some wins down the stretch, and that sweep against Appalachian State, same in softball as baseball, even against teams where you might be the better team, there's no way you can guarantee winning 3 in a row. When it comes to that third game, you've got maybe some animosity, a team playing for just something to get out of town with, but the Eagles come up big. They get those 3 wins. That clinches a spot in the conference tournament, and now if they can finish off with 2 or 3 more, they have a chance to climb a little higher and really build that momentum, as they'll have to face a very tough team in the first round.
All right, well, the Eagles actually had to come from behind in a couple of those games. Let's take a look at some of the highlights. Georgia Southern and App State in the first of a 3-game series. A nice play here by Micaiah Freeman. Georgia Southern down 4-0, but coming back in the fourth, down 4-1. Shelby Wilson singles Later with the bases loaded. Alicia Mann, the double to right. 2-run score, and the lead cut to 4-3. More good defense coming up by Georgia Southern. The diving catch by shortstop Macy Coleman. Later in the 6th, 1 on, and Coleman doing it at the plate. Up and away for the 2-run homer. The Eagles able to take a 5-4 lead. To the 7th we go. Freeman, the leadoff single. Next, Haley Carter, the grounder to short. It's thrown away. So 2 on for Elisa Mullis. She hits this one into short. It's booted, allowing Freeman to score, and it's 7-6. Next up, Hannah Farrell. And she'll single up the middle. Carter scores, and we're tied at 7-all. And then it's Logan Harrell with the walk-off single to center. Scarborough scores, and the Eagles win 8-7. Another high-scoring affair. In Game 2, Mullis the single to right. Freeman scores, and it's 1-0 Georgia Southern. To the 2nd we go, down 3-1. This one gets into center. 2-run score, and we're tied at 3-all. Still in the 2nd. Carter will single up the middle. Mann scores, and the Eagles take a 4-3 lead. Then with 2 on, it's Mullis, the batter. She takes this one for a ride to straightaway center field. The 3-run homer, and the Eagles open up a 7-3 lead. To the 6th we go. App State comes back with 4 unanswered runs to tie the game at 7. Carter, the infield single. Next, an error on the throw here. And then, nice bunt. Safe. Run comes home. Georgia Southern up 8-7. More to come. A fly ball to center. This one dropped. The run will come home. And then Shelby Wilson puts things away. And she comes through with the 3-run homer down the left field line. And Georgia Southern wins 12-9 and would go on for the sweep, winning 3-0 on Sunday. So softball wrapping things up at Georgia State in Atlanta this weekend. All right, Mike. Well, bad news for the Georgia Southern golf team. As a team, they did not qualify for the postseason. Good news is Stephen Fisk did, and that's nice to see, especially when he's up for the Jack Nicklaus Award and a lot of national awards.
This will be the 2nd consecutive regional for the Eagles junior golfer. He had gotten up to, I think, 3rd ranked in the country at one point during the fall. A little rougher go of it over the last month or two, but he put some great rounds together at the Sun Belt Championships when his team needed it. As you said, the team couldn't quite get through in match play. That ended up costing them. They could have had an automatic berth if they had won the final after winning their semifinal matches. But to Fisk's credit, he played well throughout the weekend. Now he gets a chance to do it against some of the best in the country. And I believe I saw this is the first Georgia Southern individual to get an at-large berth to the regionals since 1991. And I don't think that's so much a criticism of the players coming through Georgia Southern as it is a recommendation. God, I have a better word for that. Where can I start again?
I don't know if that's...
Okay, 3, 2, 1. And I don't know if that's so much a criticism of the Georgia Southern golf program as it is a glowing recommendation for anyone wanting to come to Georgia Southern. The reason that so few individuals get to regionals is that so often the entire team's going. So the 26-year gap really not as big as it seems. Many of those years you had 5 Eagles in a regional and not just one.
So congratulations to Stephen Fisk. Good luck there as he advances to the regionals. And as for the baseball team, don't forget they have a 3-game series Friday, Saturday, and Sunday against Troy. Now to wrap things up for now, we thank you for joining us. Hope to see you again next week.